Hi, my name is Peggy Milovina-Meyer, and I'd like to welcome you to my Anyone Can Learn to Draw class. Before radio, TV, and the internet, people learned to draw, paint, play an instrument, read music in order to entertain themselves, their family, and their friends. Now, that didn't mean there were a bunch of Beethovens and Michelangelos running around, but what it did mean is that people were using creativity to enrich their lives. And that's what this class is about. Given simple, clear, and generous instruction, you can learn to draw and gain a skill that will help you focus, improve your creativity. It will help you relax and escape all the nonsense of everyday life. This class is designed to help you learn more about the tools, techniques, and the materials that you're going to be using so you can be really comfortable taking a sketch pad or a drawing pad and going out in your yard and drawing your favorite flower, doing a sketch of a still life, a bowl of fruit, or just simply doing sketches while you're on vacation rather than buying postcards or spending a lot of time going through your phone trying to find that great one picture that you took. It'll be in your sketchbook. Right now, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the syllabus for the class. So, given that you're probably watching this right now, this is what I like to call session 0, and it's before class officially starts and going through and getting kind of a tour of the materials and tools that you'll be using throughout the class sessions. So it's important that you watch it from beginning to end. And week 1, when we officially meet for the first time, I'll do a little introduction of the class, answer any questions that anybody has, and then we are going to start learning basic penciling techniques. So how do you use graphite? How do you make it go from very dark to very light? And all the other tools, we'll start to use those as well. And we'll also focus on values and shading, and values and shading deal with the intensity of the material that you're putting down. So how dark can you get the graphite to how light can you get the graphite, and how do you blend those so they transition evenly is really a fun thing to learn how to do. Okay, and that's week 1. In week 2, we're going to be focusing on scale, and scale really is how do you make something, how do you draw something that is smaller than it actually is and make it accurate, or larger than it is, make it accurate, and how do you correctly draw things that are together in one composition, where something, it's a coffee mug, for example, and then a small spoon next to it. How do you get that right? And that's scale. And then also, we'll start focusing on highlights and shadows, and highlights are where light is more exposed to the objects that you're drawing, so there's not so many shadows. And then shadows are those things that are cast by the objects that you're drawing or cast onto the objects that you're drawing. And these techniques will help make your subjects look more realistic. Okay. In week 3, we're going to cover perspective, and perspective is used by architects, photographers, and artists, and has been for centuries, and it helps us understand how things look bigger close to us, and then when they're very far away from us, they look smaller. How do we get that right? What is involved in that? So we'll be studying 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective. That'll be a lot of fun. And then week 4, we're going to be covering composition, and composition is really, really essential for all artists. And what that does is it deals with the placement of objects in your composition. So the subject that's the focal point of the drawing that you're doing is where the viewer's eye has a tendency to travel to and spend more time. And as a part of that, we're also going to be dealing with reflective surfaces. So in our compositions, it's not unusual if we're doing a still life of a bowl of fruit in our kitchen, for instance, that bowl is ceramic and it actually reflects some of the light and things around it. And so how do you draw that successfully? The same, we'll be talking about metal and other reflective surfaces. Then week 5, we're going to be tackling a basic art school lesson. It's first year of art school, and it's how do you draw glass? And it's called the glass and the egg drawing. So we'll have that clear, beautiful glass with all the reflections and refractions going on in it. And then as a juxtaposition, an egg, which is not reflective at all, sitting by it. And so how do you put those together so it's a pleasing composition? And how do you execute all the lights and darks that are going on in the glass and on the egg? Okay, in week 6, we're going to be dealing specifically with reflections and light, and we're going to be using a mirror and subject matter sitting on the mirror because that is the truest form of reflection, and it's actually the easiest reflection to draw because it's the closest to what the object actually looks like. But there are some specific things that you do need to learn about drawing reflections, and that's what you're going to learn in the final class. Let's talk about office hours. Everybody learns at their own pace, and sometimes there are certain things we're going to be covering in class that might cause someone to have a little bit more trouble with it than they do other subjects. And that's why I offer office hours. Your tuition entitles you to 60 minutes of office hour time away from class. And you can use this time any way you like. If you want to review a subject a little bit more because maybe it's not easy to understand, or you're having problems trying to get through an assignment, or maybe you want a private critique, that's what this time is for. It's just between me and you. So let's talk about the materials that we're going to be using throughout the class. The first and really most important are the pencils. And so we're going to be working in graphite. And graphite is that basic number 2 yellow pencil that we all used in school. And there are many different brands that are available of pencils. And when you do purchase them, the most important thing to focus on is to purchase artist grade pencils. Those are a good quality and they're manufactured very well. So the pencils themselves will not have any manufacturing issues that might cause problems, any quality issues like big chunks of foreign material in the lead when you're trying to draw. You don't want that. So graphite is actually a mineral that's mined in several places around the world. It's very oily, and in order for it to be used in pencils, it has to be blended with something else, a binder, to make it strong enough that we can use to create a stick of it, put it in, encase it in wood, and sharpen it. And that is clay. Clay is the binder that holds the graphite together. The more clay that is added to graphite, the harder the pencil. The clay is hard and it makes the graphite hard. And the harder it is, the lighter the mark that leaves on the paper. Conversely, the less clay that's in it, then there's more graphite. It's a lot softer, and the marks you'll get with those pencils are a lot darker than the pencils that have a higher amount of clay. So artist grade pencils and student grade pencils, you'll notice when you see them that they have numbering and alphabetical codes on them. So that's known as a graphite scale. The most common graphite scale, especially in the US, is called HB. Pencils use the letter H to indicate a hard pencil, and the letter B is used to designate the blackness of the pencil's mark, indicating a softer lead. The letter F is also used to indicate that the pencil sharpens to a fine point. Most pencils use the HB system and are designated by a number such as 2B, 4B, or 2H, for example, to indicate the degree of hardness. For example, a 4B here would be softer than a 2B, and a 3H here would be harder than an H. So the next most important material that we're going to be working with, of course, is paper. That's the surface that we're going to be drawing on. So one of the important things to consider when you are purchasing paper is the tooth of the surface of the paper, and that's tooth refers to the texture. Texture plays a role in how the drawing material is accepted onto the surface. Heavier textures, or those that are more toothy, where there's a lot of texture, result in, when you're laying down your graphite, lines that appear to be broken, as opposed to smooth texture where there's nothing interfering with the path of the graphite, and that when you first lay it down, it's very smooth and an unbroken line. There's benefits to both types of papers. It's a matter of what you're trying to do and achieve as far as an effect, and what you end up really liking as an artist. As you go through this, you'll kind of go towards that paper. So the more tooth a paper has, the more graphite you're going to need to cover the surface of the paper. And so how do you know when that is? Well, you'll see these little white dots in the paper, and that means part of it, you haven't built the graphite up enough, that many layers, to cover the paper completely. They're those little mountain peaks, so to speak, that are poking through. So it just takes a lot more graphite to achieve that final effect that the artist desires. With the smoother papers, it requires a lot less graphite to accomplish what the artist desires as well. And again, it's more a matter of preference than it is anything else. So moving on, there's two different ways that papers are manufactured, and they are usually designated that way when on the packaging, the cover of the paper, if you're buying it on a pad. And that is, there's hot press paper and cold press paper. And this is typically what you'll see on artist grade paper, is and boards that are used for drawing, printmaking, and watercolor. And the technique is, for cold press, it results in a paper that has a lot more tooth, and there's no heat applied to it. So the paper pulp is laid into a sheet, and there's pressure that's put on it, and when the excess water is squeezed out, that pressure is released, and you have a nice kind of bumpy, nicely textured surface that when it dries, it's great. Especially watercolor artists love that. Pastel artists love it. Hot press paper employs heat, so that same pressure is put on the paper pulp, but pressure is added to it, and it results in a smooth or a very slick drawing surface. Drawing and sketching paper, the paper that we're going to be using in this class, is usually labeled on the packaging smooth, fine, medium, rough, and even sometimes super tooth. Then we also have vellum, which is a very popular drawing paper, and you will see that there is paper that is also referred to as having a vellum finish. Vellum is that sweet spot between the hot press and the cold press. It has a little bit of texture, just enough to make it interesting, and it is very popular with illustrators. It's really fun to draw on. So we are going to be working with in class things that are very close to a vellum finish. Now, paper comes in all sorts of thickness, and that's called weight, the weight of the paper. And so what that really refers to is how much a ream of paper weighs. And a ream is typically 500 sheets of paper. For most paper, the weight of the paper will be related directly to its thickness. For example, paper labeled 80-pound paper would typically be thicker than that's labeled 60-pound paper. And paper that's labeled 100-pound paper will be thicker than the 60 and the 80-pound paper. Now, most artists like to work with archival rated paper, which is also called acid-free. And that means that all the acids that could discolor the paper or make it degrade in a very short period of time, like within 5 to 10 years, is removed from the paper, or materials are used that have none of those acids in it. It's great because it stands the test of time. When it's exposed to sunlight, it doesn't discolor, which is, fantastic. That's a big plus. You would hate to put a lot of effort into a drawing, and then in 5 years, notice that it's all turned, the paper, beautiful white paper, is all turned yellow. This is typically referred to in the art world as archival grade paper. So let's take a look at the paper that you're going to be using in this class, and then a couple of other papers that you might want to try as you become more comfortable with your pencils. So this is drawing paper, and it has a medium tooth. Remember, we talked about tooth a little bit ago. And it is well suited for drawing with a variety of dry media, including graphite, charcoal, and colored pencils. You'll note, as we talked about before, that the weight of the paper in this case is noted on the cover of the pad. It's 80 pounds, so it's kind of a medium weight. And where it says drawing paper, it says medium surface, which is perfect. That's what we're looking for in this class. I also talked about acid-free and archival. This paper is acid-free. It's also marked on the cover. So it's really easy with those three things to find the paper that you're actually looking for that has the right qualities. So let's move on to another really good type of paper for drawing, and that's called Bristol, and it's usually referred to as Bristol board. And you want to have a medium tooth finished, and that means it's going to have that vellum surface or vellum finish. It depends on the brand how they mark that, but the vellum is the most important. Okay. Vellum by nature is pretty heavyweight. It's 100 pounds, and when you feel it, it's like heavy-duty cardstock. Okay, and like the Strathmore brand is one of my favorites to work with. Most of their products are acid-free. So again, those 3 points. It's acid-free. It's got the surface that you're looking for, the vellum finish, and it's a good weight, 100-pound weight. And then vellum itself is used by lots of illustrators. It's great with graphite. It's interesting. It's different than most of the paper that we're used to dealing with, in that it is a bit translucent. You can see through it. It does have a really nice tooth to it. You might think it's really smooth, but it does have that tiny tooth that we're looking for. And it's really great for very detailed drawings. Also, if you want to add pen and ink, it's good for that. And it's great for using graphite dust, which is something that we'll talk about later on in one of the later classes. Now we're going to talk about erasers. It's always surprising to beginning students how many different types of erasers are actually used to remove graphite from paper. Let's take a tour through those and see what they are. So the first eraser I'm going to talk with you about is the kneaded eraser. And this eraser is a must with graphite. So when we lay graphite down on the paper, because it is fundamentally an oily mineral, like we talked about before, it builds up a lot of pigment on the paper. And so if you just go and use a friction eraser to erase it, mostly what you're going to be doing is smearing it around rather than removing the graphite. So the kneaded eraser is a great solution to that. It's similar to a putty. It's kind of sticky feeling, and it actually is designed to lift material from the surface. So you press it down on the surface and then lift it up, and you'll notice when you do that there's a lot of graphite residue on that. And so it gets its term kneaded. It's like you don't want to replace that, put that back on the paper, because you'll just deposit graphite back on the paper. Is you just stretch it and you knead it like taffy or dough into itself, and the graphite disappears. And then you go back and you pick up more of the graphite that you want to remove. It's great. You'll know when you've used it enough, because it'll turn black, and that means there's so much graphite in it that it can no longer pick. It really isn't going to be efficient anymore. It does need to be in a sealed surface. It will dry out and get hard if you don't keep it airtight. So I like the case that this one comes in, but other brands, you just need to get like a plastic sandwich bag or something like that seals, that you can keep it in, or a small plastic box that's airtight, and that'll be perfect. So then the other group of erasers are called vinyl or plastic. Vinyl is plastic, a form of plastic erasers. And these erasers come in from very soft to hard, actually pretty hard, and can erase almost anything. But you need to be careful, especially the harder erasers like this one here, is that as you use friction, you rub the eraser over the paper, it can damage the paper and break the fibers down. So you want to be really careful as you're erasing and not be too enthusiastic. So these come in different versions. This one, for instance, is considered dustless. And so unlike some of the other erasers that you have lots of little tiny crumbs that come off of it, I'm sure you're familiar with that with other types of pink erasers and stuff. This one has really big pieces that come off of it, so it's pretty easy to remove from your paper. And it doesn't leave residue that gets in the way of your penciling. And then you get the softer versions. Like this one in particular is a softer version, kind of medium soft, and it's great too. You can get it very, very soft, which is really nice as well. I personally like this form, especially for detailed work. This product is put out by a company called Tombow, and it's called a mono eraser, and it's in this great case. And if you just want more eraser, you just push on the end like that, and there's a tube of a material inside that just continues out like a mechanical pencil. It comes in two forms. There's a cylinder, so round, and then there's a rectangle, which is great if you're going into corners of things. You have tight corners. That's a good form for that. Now we're going to talk about pencil sharpeners. Pencils need to be sharpened with a good quality pencil sharpener. If you use a poor quality sharpener, it could ruin your pencil in minutes, chew up the wood, consistently break the lead. You want to stay away from those. Pencil sharpeners fall into two categories, either manual or electric. So the most efficient way to sharpen your pencils are electric pencil sharpeners. These are my favorite tools, but then I actually draw a lot. I spend most of my time drawing. A good electric pencil sharpener can vary in price. A quality one will sharpen your pencil without chewing it up and not break the bank either. The internet's a great resource for sharpener reviews. I actually look at them on a regular basis. Since the reviews change every year with new products coming out, it's really helpful to read them before actually making your purchase. My sharpeners, and yes, as you can see, I have more than one, include dedicated plug-in to outlet and battery-operated versions. The latter, the battery-operated, is easily portable, so if you're going to move around a lot, this is great to have, and it accepts pencils of varying sizes. So these are actually my favorite workhorses. This smaller one is the X-Acto Powerhouse. What's really nice about it, and nice about this one and this one as well, is they have very high quality blades in them that don't dull very easily. So these have lasted me quite a long time. This is a little bit smaller, more compact if you have a smaller workspace. Then I also use the X-Acto School Pro. School Pro is big. It was designed for the classroom, so it was really designed for heavy-duty use. It has a really big receptacle for all of your pencil shavings, and again, the blades are really high quality. And one of the nice things about it is you can use different size pencils in them. You just dial this to match the size of the pencil that you have, and that is great. This one is more for smaller pencils, like most standard pencils. That one's okay too. And then for the battery operated, the product is from JarLink. It is great. I've had the same set of batteries in this for well over a year, and I use it a lot, and it works great, and it does take multiple size pencils without a problem. And again, the blades are very high quality and continue to be very sharp. Well, an electric pencil sharpener has its appeal. A manual sharpener will do for most of us, especially beginners. Manual sharpeners vary greatly from handheld, like these are, to mounted. Those would be one that would actually mount to your work surface, and they're great if you have a permanent work surface. I'm assuming that most of you don't. Like electric sharpeners, you don't have to spend a fortune to get a good quality product. You can check the internet for reviews and recommendations. These happen to be 3 that I have and I use depending on which box of supplies I pick up. And they all have 2 holes in them like this does, one for a larger circumference pencil, one for a smaller. They have very sharp, good quality steel blades in them and a decent size receptacle for pencil shavings. Those are the characteristics that you want to check out for. And this one, you can see it's got the 2 holes. The receptacle is generous, and it's a company called KUM, K-U-M, very high quality, very nicely regarded. And then this is Prismacolor. You can see it's got a really big receptacle here, which is great. It has a top that flips off, and it's got the 2 holes in it for the different size pencils. This one happens to be my favorite. I think the quality of the blades are great. It is lasting a very long time, and I'm really happy with it. So let's talk a little bit about blending. Once graphite is laid down on the paper, for a variety of reasons, artists want to move that graphite around. Either they want to create a more even gradation of values from dark to light, or they want to move and smudge graphite around to create more effective shading. There are a variety of tools that artists use to accomplish this, and we're going to spend a few minutes looking at those and learning a little bit about each of them. Blending stumps are essential for the artist wanting to smudge or move material around on the surface. A blending stump allows the artist to create gradations in value without introducing the oils of the finger through finger smudging, which can make drawings look dirty or uncontrolled. Blending stumps also allow the artist to create gradations and smooth application of value in areas of detail that are going to be hard to get to otherwise. You need to be careful when blending, though. New students can become enthralled with how seemingly easy it is to get an even coat of graphite over a large area rather than learning to use their pencils. The result might seem great, but it is flat and lifeless, and it would get you a failing grade on a project in art school, not my class. They are to be used thoughtfully and sparingly. They come in a variety of sizes. There's ones that are much smaller than this. These are pretty helpful. Stumps are made from compressed paper and they have sharpened ends. They come in a variety of sizes and can be sharpened like a pencil or with fine sandpaper, which I recommend because I don't like ruining my pencil sharpeners by sharpening paper in them because that'll dull those blades really quickly. Another tool that you probably have lying around the house that is also good for blending very small areas are Q-tips. For larger areas, you can use cotton balls or the makeup removal pads. They work really well, and believe it or not, also paper towels can work very well, but they're not nearly as good as the stumps. Okay, another way to blend large areas, and this is great for this, is a chamois. It's a very soft piece of lambskin that you can buy it from an art store or an art supplier. These are much, much softer than the chamois that you may have used to dry your cars. It picks up the graphite. You can see there's a lot of graphite on here. And when it's filled up enough, you can wash it with warm water and soap, let it dry, and then just massage it to get it back into that really soft, flexible material, and just keep reusing it until it kind of gives out. To make your life easier when you're drawing, there's a list of additional tools that are very helpful. They aren't part of the actual execution of the drawing, but they're great to have, and we're going to spend a few minutes talking about those. Good lighting is really important when you're drawing. So an overhead chandelier that has a lot of different light bulbs in it is not the best thing. It's going to cast a lot of different shadows. So I, in my drawing area, use a very nice light like this, actually several like this. You don't need to get anything that's this expensive or high end. It does cast a really nice light. There are wonderful tabletop editions or versions of lighting like this that you can find that are inexpensive, or you may have a really good work light at your desk, and that would be perfect to use. You just want to minimize the shadows that are being cast by a lot of different lights coming into your area. So one thing that you will absolutely need is a good drawing surface, and that's a drawing board. This is one that's typically used by students, and it's really great. It's made out of masonite, has a very smooth surface, has a really strong clip to clip your drawing pad and paper under, hold it in place. They often come with a very wide, heavy-duty rubber band that you can use to secure pads of paper down around the bottom so you can pick it up by this handle and it makes it very transportable. What you want to make sure is that, when we're drawing, that you're removing paper from the drawing pad and working on the drawing board or the hard drawing surface, because you don't want to work with paper in the pad. As you put pressure on it, it's going to transfer through to the next piece of paper and you will not have a smooth surface to work on. And so that means you've just wasted and lost a piece of paper, which is not a good thing, because while everything I'm recommending is cost effective, it's not, you don't want to just be throwing material away. So rulers are one of your best friends in drawing. I have heard so many people say, oh, I can't draw. I couldn't even draw a straight line. Well, if you have a good ruler and a pencil, you absolutely can draw a straight line. So one of the areas that we're going to be focusing on is perspective, and being able to draw straight lines or work down straight lines is really important. So a ruler like this, it can either be aluminum like this is, it could be stainless, or this is a stainless steel one. Actually, they have aluminum and also plastic. 18 inches is perfect, not totally necessary, but definitely will make your life easier. And these are nice too because they're kind of non-slip. They have a cork backing on them that grabs onto the paper. So that's one less thing you have to worry about, keeping your ruler really still. You also can get 6-inch rulers, which are nice for smaller areas. I don't think you need both. I recommend this over the 6-inch or even a 12-inch. There, again, you'll find out the multiple uses for these. So a helpful tool when we're drawing is a drafting brush, and that is to efficiently and cleanly remove residue from your drawing. So if you've gone in with a vinyl eraser, you'll notice that there's residue left over from erasing. You don't want to use your hand to remove it from the paper. One, you're going to transfer oils onto the paper, and the other thing is because you do have oil on your hand, it's actually going to catch into the graphite and move it and smear it across. So that section that you just spent a while trying to perfect the gradation would now be ruined because of that. So the way to avoid that is to use a drafting brush. So you just simply gently brush the surface, and it's great for removing excess graphite and residue from erasing. A really helpful tool to have around is drafting tape, and that is to secure our drawing paper to the board that we're working on, to tape the corners down or the sides. Keeps the paper from slipping around, which can create problems for you. So drafting tape is a low tack tape. You can, if you're buying it in an art store or you're getting it online from an art supplier, you want to look in the drafting section of the store or the online catalog and find it. It comes in different widths, but what's great about it, since it's low tack, is you can use it to anchor your paper, and when you remove it, because it is that low tack, it will not stick to the paper, so it's not going to tear the paper or damage it in any way. It's very nice to use. So it's really great and convenient and efficient to have just one storage unit to keep your drawing materials in. I've had a lot of students scrabbling around trying to locate the eraser or the pencil or the sharpener, and they can't remember where they put it, or somebody, in the family grabbed it off a table to use it. So you want to try to keep everything organized in one place. This is just a really inexpensive plastic bin. Everything that I need is actually packed in here that I've been talking with you about, and it's got a really simple lid that fits right on top, and these secure it so you can toss it into your backpack or briefcase or the back seat of your car, and everything is going to stay in place and be there when you need it. So when we work in graphite, one of the downsides of it is because it is a soft material, it does smear on paper. And so when we're working on paper, we actually have a tendency to rest our hands on it and draw like this. And so if we're working in an area where there's already graphite that we've laid down, it's going to smear. So Glassine is nice, very slick, transparent paper, or very translucent, and it slides over the top of graphite without smearing it. So we use it to rest our hand on, so when we're drawing, all the friction is going on the Glassine and it prevents smearing. And as we move it like this across the paper, graphite can't attach to it and it won't move it across the paper. So it's great for keeping things very clean, and your hand. You'll notice you won't get any buildup of graphite on the side of your hand. Thank you for watching the video. I hope it was helpful. The purpose of it was to give you a head start on all the information that I would normally cover in the first day of class, and so we can get right down to drawing. If you have any questions, please send me an email. I look forward to meeting you the first day of class.